We have talked to, on many occasions, Dan Walters of the Sacramento Bee, one of the most experienced, seasoned, clear-eyed, and cynical in all the right ways observer of the ridiculous politics of the Banana Republic of California. And no matter who you are or where you live, and I mean anywhere you live, you ought to read Dan Walters. Obviously, in California, you ought to see the truth through his eyes and his pen. And if you live in one of the many other places people are listening to the show, California is so clearly the canary in the coal mine. Actually, that's the wrong metaphor because we're committing suicide. It is so clearly the leader of a movement that is doomed. You really ought to see what it looks like. Craig, the Obamacare lawyer, and I had one of our epic mountain bike rides yesterday, and we were talking about this. He's got his new stance is that he wants California to be ruined fiscally because we've got to beat Illinois. Because Illinois is the most screwed up state in the union, and one of the states will get an enormous bailout from the other 49 states. We're going to screw y'all bad, everybody who lives elsewhere.
But the second state won't.
Right. But then Americans are going to rise up and say, why are my taxes going up this much? Because these criminals have been doing what they're doing over there.
That very, very well may be true.
Yeah.
The first state in gets the big bailout. Sorry, second state, right. No money for you.
Yeah, so California's got to beat Illinois to the slitting their own throats finish line. Anyway, another reasonable, moderate fellow is John Chang. He's the state controller. He's the dollars and cents guy in the state. And he dropped a
Sounds Asian, probably really good with math.
Yeah, that's a good point, Jack. And Dan Walters is writing about him. I'm going to quote liberally from Mr. Walters' column here. State Controller John Chang dropped a political bomb the other day, but he was so quiet about it, one could say it was a stealth bomb. By the way, I have not done a search of news sources for this story. I didn't see it anywhere until I read Dan's column on Sunday. Chang added public pension systems to his already large fiscal database. And one chart he came up with revealed that the pension system's unfunded liabilities, which is the gap between assets and liabilities for current and future pensions, how much you got or you could expect to have and what you're going to owe. The gap between that, in 2003, that gap was $6.3 billion. That's a pretty serious number. California's a big state, but $6.3 billion in 03. 10 years later, in 2013, that gap is $198.2 billion.
Wow.
Unfunded pension liabilities, $198.2 billion. But that number is probably too optimistic because the pension systems are assuming a 7.5% per year return on their investments, which is wildly unrealistic in the current environment.
This is what Michael Lewis, the Moneyball guy, wrote about in Vanity Fair, I think, a couple of years back. Mm-hmm. He said we got trillions of dollars in unfunded liabilities around this country that nobody talks about, in addition to all the other debt.
Right. And it's astronomical. Dan mentioned several cities have dropped their pension estimates for how much they'll get in future earnings. I know, Judy and I work with some fabulous investment people to help us manage our scant finances. And they said, the old model of 7.5% a year is forget it. Just forget it. You can count on a lot less than that on average. But if the 7.5% discount rate, which is what they call that figure, is also used by the giant California Public Employees Retirement System, CalPERS, and many local systems, if that's too high, the current $198 billion is really much higher. Let's see. Blah, blah, blah. He mentions the debt rose as pension funds' earnings plummeted during the recession and new benefits kicked in, despite dramatic increases in mandatory contributions. 3 California cities have declared bankruptcy in recent years, in large measure due to pension debts. And the judge in Stockton's case just the other day declared those debts may be reduced in bankruptcy, but he didn't force Stockton to do so for some fairly complicated legal reasons, which I can get into later if you want. But There's even another cloud on the situation, a retreat from aggressive investments that fund managers had pursued in the past. They've gotten much more conservative with their investments to avoid wild swings upward and downward. So again, that 7.5% a year assumption of gains is just ridiculous. And finally, how it happened. Well, if you've listened to this show at all, you have a pretty good idea how it happened. But 15 years ago, in a spasm of abject irresponsibility, then Governor Gray Davis in the legislature pumped up pension benefits for state employees on blithe, unsupportable assurances from a union-friendly CalPERS board that high investment earnings, not taxpayers, would cover the cost. And many local governments blindly followed suit. Davis was rewarding unions that helped him get elected in 1998. Now the piper must be paid, and the cost is very steep. God bless you, Dan Walters. You listening right now, however many there are of you, any given moment, it's a good-sized football stadium full of people listening. You're the only ones who know this. Congratulations. You know the secret. It will not get any significant attention. There ought to be marches in the streets. Can you imagine? It's at least $200 billion we don't have as a state. At least.
Because we overpaid for everything.
Oh, yeah. Oh, and it promised lavish pensions to the unions in return for always electing Democrats. And then the CalPERS board said, oh, yeah, you invest, buy this stock here, and your money will double every 6 months. Yeah, sure it will. Taxpayers won't have to pay nothing. And all of that was just fairy stories.
Like I've said before, if you can build a time machine, you go back in time, you go back, I don't know, 10, 20, 30. Oh, you might as well go back 30 years, and you're in.
You want to go back in time.
Get any kind of state job. Right. Any kind. I don't care what it is. I don't care how boring it is. Just do it. Put in your time, do it.
Well, you can look at porn. You can look at porn all day long anyway.
You retire, you're 50, which sounds old when you're 20, but when you get there, it's not. You're 50 years old, you're done, and you got your pension and your health care taken care of for the rest of your life. You won the lottery.
Right. You're making 6 figures a year for the rest of your life, plus health care, while it's driving around your Winnebago.
You won the lottery for doing a job, in many cases, that anybody could do. So,
well, your job is always electing the Democrat Party.
And you got a job you can't get fired from, which is not the way it works for the rest of the world. So, man, that's a sweet deal while it lasts.
So, anyway, listen, I don't mean to anger or depress you. You ought to be a little angry, honestly, because all of us have been jobbed badly by a bunch of corrupt liars. Have an escape plan. Where are you going? When the poo hits the air circulation device, where are you going to go? What are you going to do? Now, some of you young people, you're going to be, just scraping by, hourly wage, maybe just a starter job, that sort of thing. And it's going to be really tough for you to pick up and move to Nevada or somewhere, anywhere, really. Hell, at that point, you might move to Syria. And I really, really feel for you.
Joe just said Syria's better than Nevada.
Well, no.
That's what Joe just said.
No, better than California.
You're better off living in Aleppo than Reno.
No, that's not what I said.
Aleppo, the world's biggest little city.
It was taken out of context. Are they going to have lots of strip clubs in Aleppo, too? Oh, baby, I'm